feel responsibility but not feel helpless, because I think the responsibility we all feel leads to helplessness. So I don't know if this question...
I'll just go first, because I have an example that's just come to my mind straight out of your question. There was this comic strip I did which spoke of this very question in a visual and satirical manner. It listed the major climatic events of last year. Wildfires in Greece, floods in Himachal, floods in China, so on and so forth. And it just listed that all of these climatic events climate catastrophes have happened this year, along with the last panel where a character called Zero Waste Zinda is using a bamboo toothbrush and trying to save the world. I left it to public interpretation. Some people said that, okay, yeah, Zero Waste Zinda is, making all the difference that we need. Some people took personal offense because they were Zero Waste Zinda, brandishing the bamboo toothpaste on social media, which is wonderful. But my point is that unless the person you are voting for is not a Zero Waste Zinda, you being a Zero Waste Zinda does not amount to much. And I think the comic strip was able to put that point across because some people took offense to it. And I think that's also going to be my approach, here on, because I think humor is, I always keep saying this, humor is a bit like, a slap on one cheek and a kiss on the other. So it's putting the message across and softening the blow as well. And that's the simple tool I use in my work.
I'm going to do this as a request to these very gifted people here. There is this, I think in systems and in maps. There is this graph of the world from 1974 when I was born. There's the graph of 2024 now, which is very different from the one in 74. Right? We see it on social media with all the floppy disks and stuff that kids won't recognize today. It would be a very different world for somebody who just time traveled from then to now. Can we imagine something else? A completely different network of objects, motivations, state capacity, individual action, choices. Like we grew up in the era of greed is good. Can we have a different imagination of what business looks like? Right? So if you imagine the graph of, 2045, does it look very, very different from today? And what does it take to move to that? If we move from 74 to here, right? That's 50 years. I'm 50. Yes. Can we imagine something dramatically different in the next 20 years? And whether it's an individual choice, finally everything is an individual choice. Whether you are whether that individual is the Prime Minister of the country, heading a philanthropy, running a major industry somewhere, it's still an individual choice. It's still an individual bias and whatever. And I don't think we have the luxury of this individual versus system versus corporate versus government. We don't have that luxury. Every bit of this graph needs to change. Every choice, every structure, every imagination leads to biodiversity, planet bias. So I think it's truly everything, everyone, all at once, right? But I think the most important thing, and that's where I'm requesting you guys, how do we express this? Because I suck at it. How do we express this graph from 2045 that we need to get to? How do we embed that new imagination in people's heads? So yeah.
Allows somebody to be able to have this imagination that draws upon multiple spaces and to not think that one way or the other we can save the planet, or to even that sort of a mindset to say we pretty much need like a spy network everywhere that's sort of connected in the art. I feel like we lack people who have the will to want to continuously do this. Substantial people. There are people, but there are not enough people out there.
And make the 5 easy, low-hanging fruit choices that we can on a daily basis. That's 40 billion choices on the planet. And we just do the 5 easy things every day. That's 40 billion choices. They will add up to the other.
Thank you. So what all of you point to is a kind of shift in education, right? A radical re-education of the imagination in a way. And I want to pose this question particularly to those of you on this panel who work with children, work with young people. So we often have these workshops that are supposed to create empathy or to teach people empathy. Or curiosity and so on. And I find that in school, of course we value curiosity, but curiosity ends up becoming an intellectual activity rather than one that comes out of empathy and a true need and a desire to understand connections between entities on this planet. So how does one retain a focus on curiosity, which is not purely intellectual, yet is valued in this world that seems to have over-intellectualized everything to a point that creates a kind of disconnect that somebody spoke about initially. So, yeah, I mean, this is my last question and then I will turn it over to the audience, but if each of you could address it.
A part of the disconnect that we feel with nature and environment and conservation issues is also because of how we visualize and perceive these issues in our minds. And a great learning lesson for me in this matter was with the COP28 that was held in Dubai recently. And I was one of the cartoonists who was drawing live at each of these sessions. I was joining from India and drawing live, but I got to hear some really good speakers from around the world. One of them was from Kenya. She's the Miss Climate winner of the title from that country. And I'm just going to quickly pose a question at you. When you hear the word climate change, what is the first visual that comes to your mind? It's likely to be, a smoking chimney, a smoke-throwing chimney, or
polar bear, more heat.
Right, fuel guzzling, automobile, landfills, etc. But does genital mutilation come to your mind? Never in Kenya, the droughts in Kenya are exacerbating female genital mutilation in the Maasai community because the young girls are married off at an early age and genital mutilation just happens to be a culturally prevalent practice. And you can imagine what a young bride, because of issues that have been exacerbated by climate change, has to go through pain of that magnitude in her own body. And if we as storytellers are not making these links, these visual links between climate change and real personal issues that matter far more to an individual than a fuel guzzling automobile or a factory, then I think we are not doing justice to our art forms. And thankfully, because I heard a speech, I was able to draw a cartoon linking these two issues, climate change and female genital mutilation, which was received quite well at the forum, which was otherwise, a lot of greenwashing, a lot of corporate misinformation, etc. So I think this entire practice of us being here, having the responsibility of telling stories, of communicating matters pertaining to climate change, begins with the way we help our readers and audiences visualize these two words, climate change, or other words in the spectrum as well.
Yeah, we speak of it. We don't do anything down. Even when you think of the planetary crisis or climate change or whatever, it's finally 200 and something countries. India is one of those countries with 6.5 lakh villages and 4,000 liquid bodies. Like in one of those units of governance is your home, and where you're sitting right now, and the 10 square feet around you. Do you understand that? Do you understand which way, what the contour is? Do you understand which way the water flows? Do you understand? This is a question we ask. You don't know what your annual rainfall is in the village. Do you understand what the wind flows like in what seasons? If you don't understand the space you're standing in, the space you're living in, and then we had this experience deep in tribal Odisha where the younger folks did not know that in the hills, we asked them where is a spring and what is a spring here. They said, we don't have a spring in the village. And because it was a Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana village made later lower down, away from spring. The older people remember that you're a hill community. There is no way in hell you will not near a source of water. Right? So you lose the connection with your land when you don't understand it. And then the abstractions become important. Knowledge of world affairs, knowledge of geopolitics, all that kicks in, but your knowledge of the land you stand on and sit around completely vanishes, and your relationship with it and how it affects you in very deep ways. So I think the curiosity about the real around you, subjects like EVS were supposed to have brought that in, but have failed to. But I think that curiosity is very real, it's very material, it matters to you. Your loss of agency comes from that loss of knowledge. Now you believe somebody else has the answers. Industry will come from elsewhere. The answers will come from elsewhere. So I think that curiosity is not just a good to have feature. I think it's at the foundations of a skill that we need.
Found it out of those schools, and we leave the entire family unit out of that whole story of education. I think we need to catch them really young, long before they even enter kindergarten. We need a lot more parents just going out and showing them nature, getting them excited about flowers and trees and rain and every single thing that when you're walking, you're alive to the planet. This is the biggest challenge I found, particularly with urban children. They simply don't know to see. Everything is a background. And I think if we want to change that, we want to catch them young there. The other is, like you rightly said, how do we create opportunities for more engaged, immersive sort of understanding and working with nature rather than a textbook intellectual sort of approach. Again, we are stuck with adults who need to be more like children, wanting to explore, having classrooms under the trees and making that connect more visible. I don't think we have two ways about it to reimagine education as such. And I would really, really emphasize that parents think about how are they introducing nature to children. Long before they can even experience the human world, it's already there. And if that's something you can create, then this sort of integrated empathic experiences happen much later, where they can cognize it. But we need to really say, what is the tacit experiences that we want to create rather than mental?
We have about 8 minutes. So, I could go on. I, really feel like this disconnect with even more keen with things like the metaverse. And if you just live in your computer and on your smartphone and never really interact with the rest of the world. So, this is the third level tertiary. So, yes, questions from the floor. Would anyone like to?
We have an extra I have struggled with for a long time. The people here are still a curation of people with privilege, right? So we can afford to take doing these steps and say, oh, I'm not going to fly, I'm going to take the train or whatever. But then how do we remain sensitive to, even if we can't remain sensitive, to hold space for people, for example, for whom flying is a first milestone, right? It's aspirational, they want to take their parents on a flight, it's never happened to them. And then I was reading, this well-known travel person who said, well, I don't change my, I wear the same set of clothes for 3 days. That's my way of taking care of the environment. But on the other hand, you have people for whom it's an aspiration to wear new clothes and buy new clothes. So I find in some factions there's a complete tone deafness to people who might be coming into this narrative pretty late. So how do we as purveyors, interested people who need to take action, also remain sensitive to people who perhaps are not in a position to catch up at this point in time?
The village that was producing maybe 40 different products earlier has been reduced to being a consumer of 90% of its daily needs, sometimes including vegetables. I'm not giving you the amount of money that the village spends on buying vegetables, poultry, fruits, pickles is ridiculous. 94% of the Indian landscape